Have you ever wondered why some people seem to avoid you? Maybe that sounds a bit harsh, but let's face it, we all have habits that secretly make others roll their eyes the moment we enter a room. I've been there myself. There are certain behaviors we adopt, often unknowingly, that push people away and damage relationships. Let's dive into these habits and explore how they subtly sabotage our interactions. Gossiping. Gossiping feels innocent enough, doesn't it? A little chat about someone else's drama can feel like harmless fun. It's tempting because being in the know makes us feel included and important. But the truth is, gossiping isn't just a bad habit. It's a silent destroyer of trust. When you gossip, people naturally start wondering, if they talk about others like this, what do they say about me when I'm not around? I used to think gossiping was a great way to bond with others, but over time, I noticed something unsettling. People began to avoid opening up to me. Conversations became shallow, and I became the person who knew everyone's business, but didn't have meaningful connections of my own. Gossiping didn't bring me closer to others. It created distance. It also became a way to avoid reflecting on my own life. By focusing on other people's flaws, I was able to ignore my own. Gossip isn't just bad for relationships, it's toxic to your mindset. It breeds negativity, insecurity, and mistrust. When I made the decision to stop engaging in gossip, I noticed a shift. Conversations became more meaningful, and people began to view me differently. They respected my decision to steer clear of negativity. The temptation to gossip might always linger, but choosing not to engage is a powerful step toward building trust and authenticity. Passive aggression. Passive aggression might seem like a clever way to avoid confrontation, but it's anything but. It's the subtle jabs, the sarcastic remarks, and the cold shoulders that make others feel uneasy. The problem is, passive aggression doesn't solve conflicts, it amplifies them. I used to think it was a smart way to get my point across without actually saying what I meant. If someone upset me, I'd drop hints or send snarky texts, hoping they'd figure it out. They never did. Passive aggression stems from a fear of vulnerability. It's easier to hide behind sarcasm or silence than to admit hurt feelings or disappointment. But this approach creates confusion and frustration. People aren't mind readers, and expecting them to decipher your emotions is unfair. When a friend once called me out saying, "If you can't tell me what's actually wrong, how can I help you?" I realized how much damage I was causing. Communicating directly isn't easy, especially when it involves expressing difficult emotions. But clarity strengthens relationships, while passive aggression undermines them. It's better to risk a tough conversation than to let resentment fester. When you address issues head-on, you open the door to understanding and resolution. Passive aggression only builds walls, while honesty builds bridges. Avoiding responsibility. We've all encountered people who never seem to take responsibility for their actions. Missed deadlines are blamed on bad Wi-Fi, poor test scores are the teacher's fault, and every mistake has an excuse. I know this pattern well because I used to live it. Blaming external factors feels safe. It's a way to shield ourselves from guilt. But over time, it becomes clear that this habit doesn't protect us. It holds us back. In school, I was infamous for making excuses when I didn't finish my homework. My go-to lines were, "The printer broke," or "I had too much to do." One day, a teacher pulled me aside and said, "Excuses don't help you grow. Every time you shift blame, you're missing a chance to improve." Those words stuck with me. Deflecting responsibility might make us feel better in the moment, but it prevents us from learning and growing. Taking responsibility is difficult because it requires acknowledging our shortcomings, but it's also empowering. When you own your mistakes, you take control of your growth. People respect honesty and accountability far more than perfection. The habit of making excuses keeps us stuck, while taking responsibility propels us forward. Recognizing this shift is a step toward maturity and self-improvement. When you don't take responsibility for your actions, you give up the power to change your circumstances. If everything is always someone else's fault, how are you supposed to improve? Spoiler alert, you're not. I used to think excuses were a way of protecting myself from failure, but they were actually holding me back. Every time I blamed someone or something else, I was avoiding the uncomfortable truth that maybe I didn't put in enough effort. Maybe I could have done better. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. Real growth happens when you say, yes, I messed up, and I'm going to learn from it. Taking responsibility isn't just about owning your mistakes. It's about reclaiming your freedom. When you admit to your shortcomings, you can take meaningful steps to address them. I remember the first time I genuinely took ownership of a mistake at work. I missed a deadline, and instead of rattling off excuses like usual, I simply said, I didn't manage my time well, but I'll do better next time. To my surprise, my boss didn't lose their temper or berate me. In fact, they respected me more for being honest. That moment taught me a valuable lesson. People don't expect perfection. They value accountability. It's true that taking responsibility can be uncomfortable in the moment. No one likes admitting they dropped the ball, but in the long run, it's transformative. When you stop making excuses, people trust you more, and most importantly, you start trusting yourself. It's liberating to shed the mental gymnastics of constantly justifying mistakes. Instead of juggling excuses, you can focus your energy on learning and moving forward. So, the next time you're tempted to blame external factors for a misstep, try owning it. Yes, it's scary at first, but it's a game changer. Now, let's talk about something equally fundamental but often overlooked: hygiene. Addressing basic hygiene might seem unnecessary, but clearly it isn't. You'd think by now everyone would have mastered the art of soap and water, but that's not always the case. And let's be real, no one wants to be the person others avoid because of an unpleasant odor. I'll admit, I've been there. When I was younger, I went through a phase where I thought deodorant was optional. I figured if I didn't feel sweaty, everything was fine. Spoiler, it wasn't. My wake-up call came when someone awkwardly suggested I try a different brand of body spray. The horror of realizing I'd been walking around as that person was enough to send me straight to the store. But hygiene isn't just about avoiding embarrassment. It's a reflection of respect for yourself and others. When you neglect basic self-care, people notice, and they start to wonder what else you're neglecting. Fair or not, it's a red flag that can make others question your reliability. Hygiene issues aren't limited to body odor. Unbrushed teeth, greasy hair, and dirty clothes all send the same message. And it's not just about appearances. Sometimes poor hygiene is a symptom of deeper issues like depression, burnout, or low self-esteem. I've been there too. During a particularly stressful period in my life, I let self-care fall by the wayside. I'd skip showers, wear the same clothes multiple days in a row, and convince myself no one would notice. But people did notice. A friend eventually pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. That conversation was a turning point for me. Taking care of your hygiene isn't just about looking or smelling good. It's about signaling to yourself that you're worth the effort. Neglecting self-care can drag you into a cycle of self-doubt, while small steps like brushing your teeth or washing your hair can boost your confidence and overall mindset. It might feel like a Herculean task on tough days, but the rewards are worth it. Plus, let's be honest, there's nothing quite like the fresh feeling of stepping out of a shower. Now, let's address another habit that pushes people away: constant complaining. We all know someone who complains about everything, from the weather to their coffee being too hot. And if you're thinking, I don't know anyone like that, there's a chance it might be you. Don't worry, I've been guilty of this myself. There was a time in my life when I couldn't stop complaining, even about trivial things. I'd walk into work and immediately comment on how cold it was or how bad the coffee tasted. It wasn't until a friend bluntly told me, "You complain more than anyone I know," that I realized how negative I'd become. Complaining can feel cathartic in the moment, like a way to vent frustration. But over time, it creates a toxic cycle where you focus solely on the negative aspects of life. This negativity doesn't just affect you, it impacts the people around you. Constant complainers are exhausting to be around, and if you're not careful, you might find people avoiding you altogether. When others see you coming and their first instinct is to duck out of sight, it's a sign that something needs to change. The deeper issue with complaining is that it's often a mask for underlying problems. When I was in my complaining phase, it wasn't really about the bad coffee or the cold office. It was about feeling overwhelmed and out of control. Complaining was an outlet, but it wasn't helping me address the root of my frustration. In fact, it was making things worse. By focusing on everything that was wrong, I was training my brain to ignore anything good in my life. Eventually, I decided to break the cycle. Whenever I felt the urge to complain, I paused and asked myself, "Can I do something about this?" If the answer was no, I let it go. If the answer was yes, I shifted my energy toward finding a solution. This simple mindset shift had a profound impact on my outlook and my relationships. People responded more positively to me, and I felt more in control of my own happiness. Breaking free from these habits, avoiding responsibility, neglecting hygiene, and constant complaining requires self-awareness and effort, but the results are worth it. Each step you take toward better habits strengthens your relationships and improves your overall well-being. By addressing these behaviors, you can create a more positive, fulfilling life for yourself and those around you. Life is full of challenges, unexpected curveballs, and frustrating moments. That's just reality. However, constantly focusing on what's wrong blinds you to what's right. When you allow yourself to dwell in negativity, you block gratitude, and gratitude, as simple as it sounds, is the antidote to complaining. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's lacking to what's abundant, from what's broken to what's beautiful. It's a mindset shift that can transform your life and your relationships. I used to find myself stuck in a cycle of complaining, constantly frustrated by the smallest inconveniences. Whether it was slow Wi-Fi, bad coffee, or traffic, I always had something to gripe about. Complaining felt like a release in the moment, but in hindsight, it was dragging me down. It wasn't until someone close to me pointed out my negative patterns that I realized the damage I was doing, not just to myself, but to the people around me. Complaining may feel like an easy habit to fall into, but it creates a cycle of negativity that's hard to break free from. The more you practice finding what's good in life, the less you feel the need to complain. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, you start to notice what's right. Gratitude becomes a habit, and over time, it changes how you see the world. When you adopt this mindset, you not only feel better, but you also attract positivity. People want to be around someone who lifts them up, not someone who constantly drags them down. If you find yourself complaining about everything, from the weather to minor inconveniences, it might be time to ask yourself a simple question. Am I trying to solve this, or am I just stuck in the habit of whining? Because let's face it, complaining doesn't solve anything. The next time you feel the urge to complain, try something different. Find one thing, no matter how small, to be thankful for. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your face, the smile of a stranger, or even the fact that you have a cup of coffee in your hand. Gratitude doesn't have to be grandiose. It's about appreciating the little things that make life better. Over time, this practice will not only shift your mindset, but also improve your relationships. Trust me, The people around you will notice and thank you for it. Now let's talk about another common but damaging habit: being chronically late. We all know someone who's perpetually running behind. Maybe they're the type who says, "I'm just 5 minutes away," when they're actually 20 minutes out. Or worse, they text, "I'm on my way," while still lounging in their pajamas. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you're not alone. I used to be that person too. For a long time, I justified my lateness as a personality quirk. I told myself it was charming, maybe even rebellious, to show up late. But in reality, it was neither charming nor rebellious. It was just inconsiderate. I didn't realize how much it bothered others until a close friend confronted me about it. She said, "When you're late, it feels like you don't value my time." Ouch, that hit hard. I'd never thought of it that way. I was so wrapped up in my own time management mess that I didn't consider how my actions were affecting others. Being chronically late isn't just a bad habit, it sends a message. Whether you mean to or not, it tells people that your time is more important than theirs. Over time, this can damage your reputation and relationships. People start to see you as unreliable, disorganized, and disrespectful. And here's a hard truth: lateness often masks deeper issues. For some, it's about poor time management. For others, it's a way of avoiding situations they don't want to face. In my case, I realized I was using lateness as a buffer, a way to delay moments I wasn't ready to confront. Once I recognized this, I knew I had to make a change. I started setting reminders, planning ahead, and even leaving earlier than I thought necessary. It wasn't easy to break the habit, but the results were worth it. People began to trust me more, and I felt a sense of pride in being dependable. I wasn't just the person who always showed up late anymore. I was someone people could count on. If you struggle with chronic lateness, start small. Set your clocks 5 minutes ahead, plan your outfit the night before, or leave a little earlier. These small steps can make a big difference in how others perceive you, and more importantly, how you perceive yourself. Another habit that holds people back is playing the victim. We've all encountered someone who always seems to have a list of complaints about how the world has wronged them. No matter the situation, they're quick to say, "Why does this always happen to me?" At one point in my life, I was that person. I would complain about work setbacks, relationship problems, or even bad luck, always framing myself as the unfortunate victim of circumstances beyond my control. What I didn't realize at the time was how toxic this mindset was. Playing the victim is a sneaky way of avoiding responsibility and growth. When you're constantly pointing fingers, you're not looking for solutions. You're stuck in a loop of blame. It's exhausting for everyone around you, and it limits your own potential. I didn't fully understand this until a friend sat me down and said, "You always see yourself as the victim, but have you ever thought about how you're contributing to these situations?" That was a tough pill to swallow, but it was a wake-up call I needed. The truth is, playing the victim might feel easier in the moment, but it's ultimately disempowering. It's more comfortable to say, "This isn't my fault," than to ask, "What could I have done differently?" But avoiding accountability doesn't lead to growth. It keeps you stuck. When I stopped seeing myself as a victim and started taking ownership of my life, everything changed. I began setting goals, making proactive decisions, and taking steps to improve my circumstances. It wasn't easy, but it was liberating. Breaking free from the victim mentality requires a mindset shift. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What can I do about this?" It's a subtle change, but it makes all the difference. You stop waiting for the world to change and start taking control of your own life. It doesn't mean life will stop throwing challenges your way, but it does mean you'll be better equipped to handle them. Each of these habits, complaining, being late, and playing the victim, has one thing in common: They prevent you from living fully and authentically. They hold you back from forming meaningful relationships and from reaching your true potential. The good news is that these habits are not permanent. With self-awareness and effort, they can be changed. It starts with small, intentional actions, pausing before you complain, planning ahead to be on time, or taking responsibility instead of pointing fingers. These changes might seem insignificant at first, but over time they add up. They transform not only how others see you, but also how you see yourself. Life is too short to be stuck in patterns that don't serve you or those around you. By letting go of these habits, you open the door to a more positive, fulfilling existence. Thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe the video and see you in the next informative video.